No music theory course would be complete without an examination of the augmented chord, which is a major chord, 1-3-5, with the raised or sharped fifth, 1-3 sharp 5, as signified by the word augmented, which means to increase. So what I'd like to do is, as I've done with the diminished chords, give you the brief theoretical basis of this chord, with how it lives in music theory, what scale it comes from, and then cite a few examples of ways in which songwriters, composers have used this somewhat annoying but sweet sounding chord to create dramatic effect. The augmented chord is a harmonic minor scale's third triad, or 3 augmented, or you'll see it written as 3 plus. Some people like to use that as a chord symbol, plus signifying augmented. So if you were to take the A harmonic minor scale, which is and walk it up the neck, harmonized on 3 strings in diatonic, meaning scale-based thirds and fifths, you would get this set of 7 chords. A minor is your 1 chord, B diminished is your 2, and then here's C augmented. It's your 3 chord, and then your 4 is D minor, your 5 is E major, your 6 is F, 7 is G sharp diminished, and then there's 1 again, octave higher. C augmented, B diminished, A minor. The augmented chord also lives in a slightly different melodic minor scale, which is similar to the harmonic minor scale, except for instead of having that minor or flat 6, it has a natural 6, like the major scale. For example, here's A minor, B minor, C augmented again, and then we have our 4 chord is D major because of the F sharp note. E, F sharp diminished, G sharp diminished, A minor. C augmented. That's because the scale is and likewise the other very important guitar key, E minor, E harmonic minor and E melodic minor both generate a G augmented chord. For example, I'm using the D, G, and B strings now in the key of E minor. If you were to take an E harmonic minor scale and you do the same thing, harmonize it in triads, there's G augmented, your 3 plus, your 3 augmented chord, and your 4 is A minor, 5 is B, 6 is C, 7 is D sharp diminished. I was very careful to stay within the scale there. And likewise, E melodic minor gives you a slightly different set of chords, but G augmented is one of them. So you have E minor is your 1, F sharp minor is 2, G augmented is your 3 chord, and then A is your 4 major. B is 5 major, and then you have C sharp diminished, D sharp diminished, and E minor. Classical composers would sometimes use an augmented triad as a variation on the 5 major chord in a minor key, as a way to highlight and intensify say a 1-5-1 resolution. For example, say you're in the key of G minor, there's a G minor chord, and that's your 1 chord, and then instead of just going to D, 1-5-1, I'm using my open D string here because I can. It's convenient. I could also just do that. They would hold that top note, that's what's called a melodic suspension, which is a note that is late to resolve and it's held over, it lingers from a previous chord, and then it creates a very dramatic effect. There's your D augmented triad. D, F sharp, A sharp, or B flat. And then it catches up, right? Resolves to A and then resolves to G minor. And speaking of suspensions, while we're on the topic of melodic suspensions, if you were to instead take your G note and our G minor chord, and then go to D, but hold that note. That's D sus4. D, G, A, resolving to D, then resolving to G minor. So you have. So that's where sus4 comes from, and sus2. It's something that's left over from a previous chord that catches up. And if you were to do both of those things, both those moves, like that would just give you a G minor over D, which is a second inversion minor chord. Remember we looked at that recently? The augmented chord conveys an emotional feeling of yearning or longing, as in, I long to be with you again, or I long for this damn chord tone to resolve. And like the dominant 7 flat 9 we looked at recently, it's a powerful musical spice that should be used tastefully and sparingly. Stray Cat Strut by the Stray Cats offers 2 good examples of how to use an augmented chord effectively, here in the key of C minor. The first is in the song's intro, around 5 seconds, where guitarist Brian Setzer arpeggiates a G augmented chord shape and uses it as a foundation to create a really haunting, cool sounding lick. So it starts out, the bass goes. And then on a guitar, Brian plays. That's like a C minor lick, pentatonic. Then he goes, there's a G augmented chord. Wow, that's neat. What is that? That's notes from the G whole tone scale. Okay, augmented chord actually lives in the whole tone scale. It's the 1 chord, it's also the 2, it's also the 3, the 4, the 5. Whole tone. So, another great use for the augmented chord. The other example occurs at the end of the song's second pre-chorus at 2 minutes and 45 seconds. That's the part where it goes to F minor for 2 bars, and then back to C minor, F minor again, and then there's a D dominant 7th. That's really tense sounding, right? So what is that? It's a G 7 flat 9, and with a sharp 5, a natural 5 would be. Sharp 5 adds that urgency and that bite of the augmented chord. So that would be a straight augmented, but we're using it with a dominant 7th. There's your dominant 7th, F, and combining it with a flat 9, so it's super tense. Makes for a really nice, strong resolution to C minor. Like the diminished 7 chord, the augmented triad has a symmetrical intervallic structure. In this case, all major thirds, stacked major thirds. And so its inversions are all physically identical and can be used interchangeably. For example, here's an A augmented triad. A major would just be, but we're sharpening the 5, right? We're making that A, C sharp. It's actually E sharp, but nobody likes to say E sharp, so we're gonna call it F, right? And you move that up 4 frets, or 2 whole steps. That's C sharp augmented, but those are the same notes, so they're just juggled around. A, C sharp F, C sharp F, A. So it's an inversion. In fact, I'll play it over an A bass note, and then move it up another 2 whole steps. That's F augmented, but it's also A augmented, and it's also C sharp augmented. And then I'll play it again, but I'll have a bass accompaniment playing a C sharp note so you can hear. These are all C sharp augmented. And then I'll have the bass playing an F note. You can hear these are all inversions of F augmented. Interesting. And so, similar to what happens with the minus 7, there are really only 4 unique augmented chords, the other 8 being inversions of those 4. For example, we have A. Okay, that gave us A and C sharp and F. Okay, if you would go up a half step to A sharp or B flat, that's also D, and that's also F sharp augmented. Same thing if we start on B. B augmented is the same as D sharp or E flat augmented is the same as G augmented. And then C augmented is the same as E augmented, is the same as G sharp augmented. And then by the time you get to C sharp again, you're back to one of the inversions of the first one. So you only have 4. The rest of them are inversions. So you can interchangeably use them. A great example of this principle of interchangeability can be found in the inventive bridge section of Cold as Ice by Foreigner. And that's the part where it goes G flat, F augmented, A flat minor to B. So it's, I seen it before, happens all the time. Okay, so interestingly, that F augmented, I'm actually playing a strummed octave on the bottom here, purposely muting the A string, and then grabbing these 2 notes, A and C sharp, and then, now I'm actually fretting this. This is an interesting technique. I'm not barring, because I don't want to get that note in there. I'm arcing the index finger and then using the base of it to fret the high E string. That's a very cool technique. And then, so that way I can get the strummed octave without fretting that unwanted B flat note on the A string, and then using this. Useful augmented chord fingering, right? That's actually an inversion of what would be the 5 chord in the key. We were in a key of G flat, so it'd be G flat, and then we could do, go into the 5 augmented, and then the 2, A flat minor 7, or A flat minor, and then the 4. So I think it makes for a nicer sounding bass motion, you know? So we're going, as opposed to 1 to 5 to, which kind of sounds like closing time, but without the augmented chord. Or the other one would be going up to A, which sounds a little weird to go. Now I'll go to C sharp this time. And now I'll go back to what they actually do, which is go to F. That sounds the nicest, and that's obviously why they chose it. This is interesting because of the fact that we're using a first inversion augmented chord. Instead of going to the 5, we're doing it with the 3rd and the bass, which is right below the root, and then going up. And it's also interesting because it's in a major key, right? I explained to you the theoretical basis of augmented is from the harmonic minor and melodic minor scales, but it can also be used and has been used to great effect in major keys, which is a topic we'll explore further next time.